I just got forwarded this brilliant meme. It just said, nobody owes you shit. And it's so true. I mean, if more of us took this into account on our day to day lives instead of going through life assuming that, life owes us something or that other people owe us something, we'd probably feel a lot better about ourselves. Again, it's about those expectations. Anyhow, that's not what I came on here to talk about today. Today I'm going to be discussing push pull relationships. Now, a lot of people have either been in one or they are currently in one. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of information as to why they happen and ways in which you can go about resolving it. Now, a lot of it is down to your attachment style and attachment theory. For anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, I've covered it. It's in my highlights. So if you want to check out my homepage on Insta, you'll get all the details there. But to give a really quick synopsis, your attachment style is generally a result of the relationship that you would have had with your primary caregiver as a child. What is it with me the last few days? And it basically indicates the level of security that you are going to feel in your adult relationships based on the feelings that you had growing up. And they fall into four different categories. However, they can be divided into two primary groups, and that's secure, which means that you're very autonomous but also well able to connect in relationships, or insecure, which means you struggle in some way with intimacy and connection. Now, it's estimated that over 50% of the population have an insecure attachment style. So this has major ramifications for relationships worldwide. And an awareness of your attachment style can be so beneficial in finding out how to get the most from your relationships, as can an awareness of your partners. And a push pull relationship occurs when you have an avoidant person with an anxious, preoccupied person. And the anxious, preoccupied person tends to be a pursuer. They're looking for connection. They're constantly craving reassurance. They don't feel very secure in the relationship. And the avoidant person tends to find this all a little bit claustrophobic, and as opposed to trying to meet the needs of the insecure person, the anxious person, they tend to withdraw completely. Consequently, when the anxious person feels the withdrawal, they tend to be quite sensitive, to these things, feels the withdrawal of the avoidant person, they become quite critical and, kind of can come down very harshly, which further exacerbates the problem and results in this kind of push-pull cycle. And the anxious avoidant person tends to become what's known as the pursuer. This is a person who requires a lot of reassurance in the relationship, and they tend to push for this quite a bit, which impacts on the avoidant person, making them withdraw as opposed to trying to meet those needs. It makes them feel a little bit claustrophobic, a little bit trapped, and as a result, they pull back away from the relationship. Now, generally, the pursuer tends to be highly sensitive to any form whatsoever of rejection, and as a result, they become highly critical, which in turn perpetuates this kind of ongoing push-pull dance. The cycle continues and exacerbates. Now, it's so important to understand that, first of all, this doesn't mean a death sentence for a relationship. I mean, first of all, it's recognizing the actual pattern that's taken place, and that needs self-awareness on both parts, but also a couple that are willing to sit down and look at the relationship very honestly and become very transparent about ways in which they need to meet the needs of the other person. It's also extremely important that it doesn't become a blame game. Any problem within the context of a relationship, whilst it may have been initiated by one party, is generally a co-creation. It takes two to tango. So you have to take into account your role that you play within maintaining this negative dynamic. And the focus needs to be on fixing the problem, not fixing the people. You have to see it as the problem versus the two you, as opposed to you versus me. So, as I said, one of the first steps in amending this issue is, first of all, becoming highly aware of your attachment style and the way in which you're contributing to the issue. For the avoidant person, it's about, becoming more vulnerable, interacting more, being more present with your partner, communicating with them. I suppose appreciating and respecting their needs and trying to meet them to the best of your ability, at least putting an effort in. For the anxious, preoccupied person or pursuer, it's important to try to manage your anxiety to the best of your ability and to also respect the boundaries and the personal space of the withdrawer or the avoidant person in the relationship. As always, it's essential that there's a lot of mutual respect, really strong communication, really active listening. I mean, being present with each other, honouring each other's voice and honouring each other's needs. Just because they don't reflect how you like to live your life doesn't mean that they're irrelevant. Now, as if there wasn't enough there to take into account, there's also the gender difference. We have to remember that our brains are hardwired very differently between the genders, and it kind of all dates back to hunter-gatherer days when the men would be assumed to be the hunters. So they needed to be sharp, they needed to act quickly, and they needed to take decisive action. Women, on the other hand, were gatherers, and they were taking care of children. So they needed to be highly intuitive, and this is why women have a higher sense of intuition about something being wrong. They really listen to their senses, and because women generally take care of children, their hearing, their sense of smell, their kind of sixth sense nearly as well tends to be higher, which frustrates the fuck out of men for some reason. But it impacts the way in which people repair within relationships. So, for example, women like to really tease things out. We tend to kind of consider all cases scenarios. We tend to have a greater attention span and a greater ability to consider so many different aspects of the problem. Men do not want to sit and listen. They want to act. So basically, as soon as you tell a guy that you have a problem and you want him to hear you out, he's like, okay, what can I do to fix this? And how do we get rid of this straight away? And that's just the way we're hardwired. So it's taking that into account when you're having your conversations, that your man isn't going to be the same as your female friends, nor vice versa. And I suppose rules of thumb that you take into account is that generally with a man, you need to tell him something numerous times, and you need to emphasize several times that this is something that's important to you. On the other side of things, with women, you need to be considerate, you need to be affectionate, you need to really be present and actively listen to them, in order for them to feel heard. So there's a lot of content here today. I've kind of flown through it. But again, if this is something that you feel you would like more information on, or you'd like any assistance in figuring out your attachment style, or indeed how you can communicate better in your relationship, how you can explore each other's needs a bit better to have a more fulfilling relationship, then get in touch on here or via the website. It's fundamentals.ie, and of course I'll be covering some aspects of relationships in my upcoming workshop in September in the Maldron Hotel in Tallaght. Hope to see you there.